Hey guys, welcome back to the Music Hole. My name is Cole, and I'm very excited today because we're talking about one of my favorite bands of all time, Husker, which is, I forget which language, but it means do you remember. And they were one of the best cult bands from the 80s, in my opinion. Their style of music was like pop, but in the vein of hardcore punk. So like the sound is really intense, but there's a lot of pop melodies and vocals going on. So it's very interesting. And this is their album from 1985 called Flip Your Wig. And by the way, I love this album cover. You've got like the cake frosting here, and here. I just love the colors on this album. But anyway, it's one of my favorite Husker Du albums, and I'm excited to talk about it. So let's jump right into track 1, which is called Flip Your Wig. It's such an energetic beginning to this album. I love the guitar riff at the beginning. And these lyrics are pretty philosophical. I dig them quite a bit. Because it sounds like, this came out right after Zen Arcade, which is probably their most well-known album. And that's a pretty famous album at this point. And so what he's talking about in these lyrics are basically, they had this hit, but I guess maybe other musicians or fans are kind of asking Bob Mould, the singer, like what the secret is, right? As if he knows himself what the secret to life and success is. So he's kind of like addressing that a little bit as to like, they happened to make this amazing album and it sold really well underground, I guess, or it was influential. And so all these people, are expecting Bob Mould to have the answers to some degree, which of course he doesn't. But, when you look up to someone famous or someone who's successful, you just kind of automatically assume on some level that they know what they're talking about. Or else how would they become famous or successful, right? So I like these lyrics a lot. They make me think a little bit, which is cool. But it's a great opening song, as I said. That's all I have to say about it. So let's move on to track 2, which is called Everything. Yeah, I love this song. It's very comical, right? Because it's basically about a guy who's just like super head over heels for this girl, just like absurdly, every movement, every sigh, everything turns this guy on when it comes to this woman. And the woman, as she says, she says, "Honey, be a man, get off your knees, stop worshiping me." So like, she's not necessarily into it. So for all you men out there, be careful. You don't want to put women on a pedestal because, it's like charming up to a point, I would imagine. But this is the first introduction on this album to our second singer, who I believe was Grant Hart. So they switch off and on, Bob Mould to Grant Hart. But anyway, that's all I have to say about this song. It's a really good song. It's really catchy. Pretty much all of side A on this album is really catchy and memorable, especially the next track, track 3, which is the single and the best song hands down, in my opinion. It's called Makes No Sense at All.
Walking around with your head in the clouds, it makes no sense at all. So you're so short, but you're walking so tall, it makes no sense at all. Is it important to yelling so loud? It makes no sense at all. Walking around with your head in the clouds makes no difference at all. Yeah, it makes no sense at all. Makes no difference at all. Well, I don't know why you wanna tell me when I'm right or when I'm wrong. It's the same thing in your mind. The only time I'm right is when I play along. When I play along. Walking around with
It's just such a memorable song. I mean, and the lyrics are just terrific. He's talking about a guy who, as he says, he's got his head in the clouds. So like he has such a high opinion of himself, and he's probably used to people sucking up to him. So like when he says, I don't know why you want to tell me when I'm right or when I'm wrong. It's the same thing in your mind. The only time I'm right is when I play along. So what he means by that is this guy, he just assumes everyone sucks up to him, and he just assumes he's right because he's successful, I imagine. And he probably is not used to criticism or anybody challenging him in any way. So like there's a certain kind of person, especially celebrities, who obviously they're very successful, and when they're very successful, they kind of like elevate themselves to the point where they must be doing everything right because clearly they've made a lot of money and they're very famous, and so like of course they must know what they're doing, but no one's challenging them. No one is willing to tell them the bad news, so to speak. No one is willing to be negative with them and say like, well, I don't like that idea. Like I know you've had a lot of successful ideas, but that idea is not the greatest. So that's how I interpret this song. It's just a great pop single from the 80s. It's one of my favorites, but that's all I have to say about it. So let's move on to track number 4, which is called Hate Paper Doll. So that's Hate Paper Doll, which is kind of a confusing song lyrically, I'll admit. But it sounds like Bob is kind of jealous of somebody who, as he says, he's cut from a sack that you got on TV, which is kind of his way of saying that like his personality is cookie cutter, that he just like is adopting a trend on TV. He's cut from the cloth of a TV trend or whatever, and he's still complaining that he wants it free. So like this guy is just like the worst type of person, and Bob Mould is just hating this paper doll. By paper doll, paper implies that they're very fragile, that they're not made up of much, right? So this person, this paper doll, is just like, they're so shallow, they don't really have their own beliefs. They're just paper thin, right? And so he just hates this person who apparently, I would imagine, is doing very well in their life. So that's kind of why he's jealous of this guy who's probably doing well, but he also hates this guy because, like, how can this guy do so well when he has such a terrible personality? So that's what it makes me think of, It's kind of a dense song lyrically. It's a little hard to decipher, but it made me think of that. So I thought I'd share it with you guys. It's a very, very catchy song though, right? It's got some great melodies on it. But that's all I have to say about it. You know, it's a short song. But let's move on to track 5, which is definitely one of my favorite songs off the album. It's called Green Eyes. Oh my goodness, I just love the atmosphere on the song. It's just so perfect. And it really accentuates this guy's love for this girl. And it's probably the same person and the same girl from that earlier song, Everything. So this guy is just infatuated with her beauty and her green eyes, right? And just the sound of the song, I think perfectly matches this guy's beauty, or this guy's admiration, right? Because it's such a beautiful song, and the melody is so memorable. And you know, I believe this guy that he's just totally he's totally head over heels, bordering on a little creepy maybe, but that's all right, I guess. But it's just a lovely pop song in my opinion. But that's all I have to say about it. So let's move on to another highlight for me, which is Divide and Conquer.
When we divided up all the land, we got states and cities, cities have their neighborhoods, and more self-definition. This country's divided by wall, ocean and latitude, and longitude, longing to find out just what the missing was.
Yeah, I love the philosophy in this song because basically, you know, he's saying how humanity is divided up into, you know, continents and then countries and then cities and then neighborhoods and then families. So like we divide ourselves up into all these hundreds of different subdivisions. But at the end of the day, like he says, we're longing to find out what we're missing. So like we all want something from someone else. Like, you know, we like Mexican food, or we like Japanese anime, or we like German automobiles or whatever. So like it's so strange how we do this as a race. We divide ourselves even though we want to come together and appreciate, you know, everything we all have to offer each other. So I kind of like this song. It's kind of going deep a little bit, and I can dig it. But that's all I have to say about Divide and Conquer. You know, again, it's a really cool song. It's very memorable. It's one of my favorites. But let's move along to track number 7, which is called Games.
Stay here the rest of my life. I can be happy, never be lonely.
So games is interesting. You know, he's referring to the game of life, right? That we all play. Where if you don't play the game of life, you know, you risk being lonely, and you risk not having money, and you risk not feeling satisfied in your work or whatever. But life is a game that we all play. Some of us succeed, some of us fail. But if you don't play, then obviously you'll never be able to achieve certain things. So he's kind of addressing that. You know, he's going deep again. Come on, man, Bob, you're going deep. I love it. It's another really memorable song lyrically, I thought. You know, he's just reflecting on the reality of life. Like you're not going to get anywhere if you don't even try. So I dig it. But that's all I have to say about games. I'm going to skip a few songs. You know, the baby song is just like not even a song. And then Find Me is not terribly interesting in my opinion. So I'm going to skip those two. And let's do track number 10, which is called Flexible Flyer.
Time, places, and situations. You just do it for the play. Every dip, every sea, and what do we say? The wheels of your wagon are rusty. You can paint them until they are new. You can go down a hill, but if you can't, then I believe you.
So that's Flexible Flyer, and I like this song because it makes me think of a few things. I mean, it sounds like what he's talking about is, you know, there are certain people who choose to live fast and die young, and so, you know, by doing that, they live a more exciting life, which might end in early death. Like, let's say if you try a lot of drugs, for example. But I really like the line where he says, "If the wheels of your wagon are rusty, you can paint them until they're new." So he's kind of thinking about the fact that, like, you know, on one hand, we can all put on a front, we can all mask our issues, our real issues deep inside. We can appear fine when in reality we're all struggling for one reason or another. You know, you can always paint them until they look new. So, like, I like that as commentary just on the fact that a lot of people probably have a lot of issues that they don't talk to anybody about. They keep them inside, right? And because they don't talk about them, you know, they're rusty metaphorically. You know, they're pretty damaged. But I mean, let's face it. Like, in society in general, it's generally not accepted to bother people with their issues unless, you know, they're like an amazing friend, or if they're your therapist or your doctor. But most of us kind of just hide our problems. We paint over our problems and just pretend we're fine. So I kind of like the two things he's talking about here, you know. I dig it. He's getting deep again. But that's all I have to say about Flexible Flyer. So let's move on to track 11, which is called Private Plane. So Private Plane is an interesting commentary on success, you know, because he's asking, like, how far away is the farthest star? And the guy's like, it's so far away, you're never going to get there anyway. Unless, as he says, you take a private plane. So private plane, to me, what that means is essentially like you need to know somebody with connections, or you need to have a lot of money so that you can just pay your way, you know, with marketing or whatever, to the top. Unless you can break the ball and chain, in the sense of like, unless you can just be either so good that everyone notices, or unless you somehow find a miracle and become free of the system. Like, the only way that you're going to rise to the top and reach that far star is if you know people, if you have money, right? It's just the reality of it for most artists. So I like that he's talking about it, you know. It's very, very true. It's very unfortunate, but it's just kind of the way it is. But that's Private Plane. It's another good song. But I have one more clip for you guys from track 12, which is called Keep Hanging On. I'm skipping the last two songs because they're instrumentals. They're good songs, but you know, there's not much to talk about. So let's do the last clip for Keep Hanging On. So that's Keep Hanging On, which I think is the fitting end to the story, because essentially it sounds like he's saying that, like, at the end of the day, finding love is probably the most practical way to keep sane and to keep doing what you're doing. You know, you may not be successful soon, or you may not ever be successful, but as long as you have somebody's love, and you hold on to that love, and you nurture that love, and you cherish it, then everything else is kind of a bonus. That's how I like to think of keep hanging on, right? So he's probably speaking autobiographically a little bit, in the sense that, like, you know, he believes in himself, but he has these lofty ambitions, but he has to, you know, be reasonable. It might not happen for him, but at least he's got this lovely woman in his life, and he's just got to hold on to it. He's got to keep hanging on. But yeah, that's Flip Your Wig. Again, it's an interesting sound. It's like hardcore punk, but really poppy. And I think they did it really, really well. And I love the lyrics on this album. If you like this album, definitely check out Zen Arcade, Warehouse Songs and Stories, and New Day Rising. They're all really good. But yeah, that's Flip Your Wig. I hope you enjoyed it. I hope you thought it was interesting. Feel free to comment, as always, with your thoughts and opinions. I'll check them out. And if you like the video, please like and subscribe. It would really help me out. You know, I enjoy making these for you guys. But yeah, that's Husker. Check them out. And have a good one.